What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones and AJ. We're here to talk about what is next for Carolina basketball. I mean, it's just been a crazy portal season for the Tar Heels, to say the least. It's shaping up to be even crazier, probably 10x crazier on the football side as well, with all the movement and just the sheer amount of ins and outs over there right now. But AJ, it's been an eventful 34 days since the season ended for North Carolina. 34 days by the time this podcast comes out between then and the Ole Miss game. And man, when you look at it, you've got a Carolina team right now that's to end the season has lost his entire starting five of Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Drake Powell, Jalen Withers, and Vin Allen Lubin. Also lost guys like Ian Jackson to the portal, Cade Tyson to the portal, Jalen Washington as well. Ty Claude graduated, obviously. And when you break it down, AJ, you're in a situation now where only three returning scholarship players for the Tar Heels are Seth Trimble, James Brown, and Zayden Nye, a guy who wasn't even on the team last year. So I'm sure you'll talk a little bit more about that later on too. But Carolina finds itself in this position where, man, they've got to go get more guys now. I know they've brought in a class that we've discussed, and I think it's a portal class that has a lot of potential and, some promising things about it, but a portal class that we're going to have to kind of see who's ready-made when they get here to Chapel Hill and how they develop. But what now for Carolina, AJ? I'll just go ahead and ask you that. I've set the stage for everybody so they know why we're talking about this. Where do you go now if you're Hubert Davis and go?
Well, first we have to address Vin Allen Lubin, because he said in his tweet that his intention is to be back. He's fully intends on coming back. But I don't think you enter the portal if you fully intend on coming back.
I don't get that one still. I don't get that.
Strong arm other ways. It's a very bizarre situation. And we've done a pretty solid job explaining it on the board. I had a post Wednesday morning before I left the football press conference about it. And there's still more information to find out, but I don't think the brass at Carolina's tugging on Vin Allen Lubin's pant leg as he walks out the door and saying, no, please, just get out of the portal, come back.
I mean, you can't really blame him.
I don't think they're doing that. And part of it's because how this thing played out. How it went from everything's fine to all of a sudden, really? He's doing what? He said what? So I think they're going to operate, as you said, as if they got three guys coming back. They've got four in the portal so far, three freshmen coming in. That's 10. But of that 10, you've got, of the three freshmen, Kendall Wilson's going to play, maybe start. We don't know. People tend to think freshmen are going to be more than they really are. I got to wait and see him. He'll play. He'll have a role, no doubt. Yeah. I love Derek Dixon. I like the way he's grown. Guys of Washington Post Metropolitan Player of the Year. That says something. So I think he has a chance of getting on the floor. Isaiah Dennis may not. And then you have James Brown and Zayden Nye. James Brown is a long way away. You got to love his effort. He's actually decent around the rim, but there's a lot of other things he needs to work on. He's a long way away. He wasn't an ACC guy this season, but maybe he could be next season. Zayden Nye, we reported first back in December that he was working out at the facility. I saw him there. I was doing a podcast with you at Three Things, and I'm in the players' lounge area right where the door of the locker room is. I see Zayden Nye walk in there. I'm like, Zayden Nye just walked in. What's going on here? Got a little key and everything. And he was not in school. He was living in Chapel Hill and doing whatever, but he was using the facilities. Couldn't work out with the team. He wasn't talking to Hubert or anything like that. He was just using the facilities. I think it's great that guys in this situation are allowed to do that. I think it's fantastic. Anything else that helps these guys have a place to prop up and do what they got to do to get back in the fine good graces, I'm all for that. Then he enrolled in January, continued to use the facilities, but could not work out with the team. I guess at some point in May or early June, he'll then be back in that infrastructure with the full team and all that kind of stuff. So everything we've been told all along is that he will be back and he'll be among the bigs at Carolina, which is one of the reasons they're not tugging on Vin Allen's pant leg. because you've got Vasar, you've got Wilson, you've got Brown, you've got High, and you've got 6'11" Jaron Stevenson, who may be a perimeter player, but 6'11" is 6'11". Height doesn't slump. Like a 6'11" guy doesn't become 6'5" for a couple of games. He may play like he's 6'5", but he isn't 6'5".
Yeah.
So they've met a lot of those needs. So do they go out and find a replacement for Van Allen Lubin? Or with Drake Powell going to the NBA, that's two spots. Do they take resources from Ven and resources from Drake and what else they had, put it together and try to go get a dynamic player? They need a wow shot maker. They don't have one yet that we know of. Nobody that's proven it. Is that what they do? So that's why we're doing this podcast, because Carolina has to go out and get somebody else. They cannot go into next season with these 10 on scholarship. That is not a roster when your job is on the line that's going to get it done, at least on paper. It could change what you see them start playing, but I think they learned a lesson this past year. You can't rely on a lot of dudes being more than you've ever seen them be, because it could backfire. And it backfired this past year with two guys. And you can't afford that to happen next year, because that's not enough there to get them to the tournament if a couple of those guys don't work out that they expect to work out big time. Yeah,
and again, I've talked about that a lot, and we've talked about that a lot of, there's just a different pressure and just that comes with playing for North Carolina. It's one of the most, watched and criticized and critiqued college basketball programs, if not the most. So there's a different pressure that comes along with that. So sometimes guys struggle adjusting to it. I mean, we saw like a guy like Cade Tyson, very sought after in the portal, comes in and it just never really works out. It wasn't like there wasn't talent there that you could see. I mean, there was a reason he was so highly sought after, but for different factors, a lot of which we talked about felt like it was mental. It didn't work out. So while I like what Carolina's done in the portal in a lot of ways, and you could see the potential and why they maybe brought these guys in, there's not really anybody there right now that you can pencil in and say, you know what, he was at an SEC program and was averaging 15, 20 points a game, even less than that, and say, okay, you can make a very strong case that what he did there translates very well to what's going to happen at North Carolina.
Yeah,
again, there's talent there and there's potential there, and I like a lot of the pieces, but it does feel like Carolina would really benefit if they could go out and get some guys that are more, I'm going to use the word ready-made. I don't know if that's an accurate way to describe it. But
it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you and I were talking about that a little while ago before we hit the record button, that they've got some nice players. They've got nice parts. They are fillers for a great skyline. I've done the skyline analogy before. Right now, if North Carolina's team next season was a skyline, it'd be like Boise or Wichita. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Or Raleigh, which isn't exactly beaming into the sky.
Yeah, no.
But those are nice parts if you can add something that really says, wow, that's the crown jewel of a really cool city. They need that. And now that they have Drake Powell money and I think Van Allen Lubin money, plus the money that they still had, they have an opportunity to go out and spend and maybe even overspend for the right guy, because they need somebody. And at this point, portal's closed, so the other guys aren't going anywhere. You have the value of the portal being closed on your side. I'm sure that there was some celebrating going on around America in coaches' offices last night.
God, I would be celebrating. Oh my God.
So now you
like I just won a national title. Now
you go get that guy and everybody else got to deal with it.
I'll be cutting down the nets.
And that's what they need to do. Hubert's going to be in a warm seat. Okay? He's going to be on a warm seat. And justifiably so. This is North Carolina. This isn't Oklahoma State, which actually has a decent history. Mm-hmm. This isn't Iowa, which has a decent history. It's North Carolina. Fran McCaffrey did a lot of great things at Iowa, and they fired him. This is North Carolina. There's a standard. Mm-hmm. And Hubert knows that. I've been told he's aware of that and understands it. He's got to get a player. So right now, if you were to look at the class they brought in, I think I'd give them a solid C+.
Yeah.
It's possible Vasar explodes and becomes a second team All-America, first team All-ACC. I can envision that happening. But that's not enough to get this team where it needs to be North Carolina. You also need Kyan Evans to be whatever he was against Memphis. That dude's got to take the court about 30-plus times next year. And he did it once this past season, which is to your point you were making. Jonathan Powell, he went 9 straight games without an assist. He's a shooter. He got more aggressive as the year went on. If you go look at his game-by-game log, His rebounding picked up. He had a stretch of about 6 games where I believe he had no fewer than 6 and no more than 9 rebounds in league play. That's a good sign. That's a guy getting more comfortable and confident with the whole of the game. Jaren Stevenson had his moments. He was also in a situation where a team was playing to win a national championship, and he had a role. Mm-hmm. David Sisk, the great David Sisk, has said, look, I think North Carolina's offense really suits Jaren Stevenson. It didn't so much at Alabama. He was a role player, but one of the things he was a defensive stopper. By the way, Jonathan Powell, really good defensive player. Kyle Evans, good defensive player. Vasar, good defensive player. So they need to go out and get someone that if there's 17 seconds on the clock and you've got whoever in the ACC in town, you're down a point, who's going to take the shot? Mm-hmm. Who's going to handle the ball and get them the shot? There's some concerns about Evans not being a great playmaker. I think he'll be really good on the pick and rolls from the top and maybe even the wing, but we haven't seen a ton. He's a pitch ahead guy, but what about the half court? Someone that you could put the ball in their hands, they're going to get you a bucket. That's what they need to go out and get to be a much more complete team. Without that, as it stands, with no Lubin and no Powell, there are deficiencies on this team.
Yeah, and that's, again, no slight to the guys they brought in, but you just look at, and again, 100%, and you look at who they've lost, though. I mean, I listed the players they've lost, as of right now, AJ. You made a great point when we were talking about this off camera. The only returning scholarship guy that's ever made a three-pointer for North Carolina, AJ. Seth Trimble. That's how much production Carolina's lost. And it remind you guys, it wasn't exactly a vintage North Carolina team last year either. And then you've replaced them with potential, which is great, but that doesn't always hit, especially in this transfer portal era where maybe a guy could be good in a couple years down the line, but you almost, if you're Hubert Davis, don't necessarily have that time to wait. Well, but if a guy comes in and struggles next year, there's no guarantee he's going to be back anyway. So I don't know, man. I'm not trying to hate on the portal class. It's just you look at the amount of production they've gotten and you look at kind of the potential there, but no really necessarily guys you can pencil in for anything quite yet.
Here's what I like about
reasons to not be concerned, but just be like, they need to go get some more guys.
You mentioned the three-pointers. They brought in 181 made three-pointers from last season. So they got some guys that can shoot it.
Just nobody's that's done it at Carolina yet.
They haven't done it in Carolina. And I agree it's different. You can look at a lot of guys that have come in and say, yeah, it's different. No doubt it's different.
And let me just add this too. I've said this a few times, but is a Carolina program too that finds itself in, I hate to say it, the worst spot it's been in how many, we've done a lot of podcasts about this in how many years? I mean, we did an off-season podcast about how Carolina needs to be elite again. That has to be the focus this offseason. I'm not saying these guys might not come in and do it. There's not really tangible evidence that I can look at and say for certain that they will. But then, you know what people will say as well, you go look at a guy like Walter Clayton at Florida who came from Iona. And yeah, you do get guys a lot, but let's not act like those guys are like, they're a dime a dozen. They're not everywhere across the country where that happens.
Here's the thing. That's a great point you made. Now, I had this conversation when I was walking yesterday to get my steps. Someone on the phone, I used Clayton as an example. I saw one of Florida's games in person this year. I covered it. And I watched Todd Golden some, and that was when Todd Golden was under fire about those text messages and stuff. And one thing that was clear with him is he's a coach that's really good at giving newcomers, either from an Iona or freshmen, confidence to go out there and excel. Carolina fans don't want to hear this, but when K started going freshman heavy, he was really good at giving them the confidence to go out and perform right away. Shire's been really good at that too. That's not an area of strength for Hubert.
It's a good point.
Hubert has not been really good at freshmen coming in and boom, you're the guy, you go do that. We'll see how he does with Caleb Wilson, who actually doesn't have a full game yet. And that's why Hubert's tinkering. It takes him a while to figure out what all works best. And if he's going to have all new parts, there's a danger that it could take him a whole lot of time to figure it out. And he also could be in a situation where he's got a point guard from Colorado State, which I maintain is power conference basketball. The top half of the Mountain West is every bit as good as the middle, climbing toward the upper middle of the ACC, no doubt. And quite frankly, almost as good. after Duke this year as bad as the ACC was. And I ran the numbers. Colorado State played 13 games this season against clubs that were in the NCAA tournament that were either from power conferences or the Mountain West, which means they're all Power 4, Power 5 caliber teams. And he had great numbers, but he was at 2.9 assists and 2.0 turnovers. Only 2.9 assists, your point guard. You've got to have a distributor and get guys shots, especially when a lot of your offense is going to come from up front next year. You've got to get distributors. He had an NBA player out there with him. Meek Clifford is going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
He's a guy who just give him the ball, gets a bucket. Mm-hmm. So there was less pressure on him to be a playmaker. Right now, as it stands, Jonathan Powell's going to put the ball on the floor, guy, and score. Vassar could do stuff, but he's a big man. Give him the ball. Jaron Stevenson's got some of that put on the floor, pull up stuff, but he hasn't done it a ton in college because most of his shot attempts last year were threes at 6'10". So you look at all that, and there's getting guys and infusing them with confidence, saying you're the guy, and understanding the buttons to push. Everyone's got a different button. I had a conversation with Mac Brown one time about he's got 85 different buttons to push. That's hard. But sometimes in football, there's a collective aura that will move guys along. In basketball, it's far more individualistic, where you have 13, 12 buttons you got to push. And it's hard to know the button to push if you don't yet know the kids. That's part of the transfer portal. That's why the rankings at the beginning of the season are far more ridiculous now than ever before, is because you just don't know how things are going to mesh together. How does the coach how does he vibe with these guys? So when they're looking at bringing somebody in, if you go out and get a dude, like a dude with an exclamation mark, it makes the other stuff a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. It's going to make Cayenne's job easier. It's going to help Vassar. It's going to help Jaron. It's going to help Jonathan Powell. It's going to help Seth Trimble. If Seth thinks he's got to be the guy that was in Memphis in the exhibition game next year, that may not be the best role for him because he just may not be that guy. So if you could find someone that could get you those buckets, make you a wholer team, and not have to constantly be really good with 5.5 court, you could be good, but really good in the open court and have a dude that bails you out of stuff. How many bad possessions did RJ bail Carolina out of the last few years?
Yeah.
Just crappy possessions. When I covered Duke and Carolina, I covered them at the same time, did a lot of Duke games. And we used to joke sometimes about how, in the first 18 possessions, 12 of them for Duke were terrible. But they scored on 11 of them because JJ would hit a 24-footer with 6 seconds on the shot clock and nobody else opened.
They bail him out. Yeah.
RJ did some of that for Carolina. They need to go out and get a guy that bails you out of bad possessions, that gets you that bucket with the shot clock down, that relieves some of the stress from the other dudes. But they do have enough with those guys, I think, that a lot of people have to be guarded. So like when Duke shut down RJ in the second half and at home in the game in Chapel Hill, Carolina was a little rudderless. Mm-hmm. So you got to infuse the other guys to be confident, okay, if this dude's shut down, I can step up and be a dude and score. Mm-hmm. I think that's not one of Hubert's strengths. So if you go and get a guy that's just automatically like that, that makes it a little bit easier for Hubert and everybody else.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Again, and you look, I mean, and the reason some of this is based off too is like, let's look at 3 of Hubert's most successful transfers: Brady Manick, Harrison Ingram, Cormac Ryan. Just name 3 right there. They all have a lot of things in common. Cormac Ryan, proven guy, if super experienced in the ACC and proven in the ACC. You kind of knew what you or thought you kind of knew what you're going to get with him. And you ultimately kind of did, if not maybe a little bit more than you expected. Harrison Ingram, not an experienced ACC guy, but a guy that was like the guy at Stanford for multiple years and a guy that was super highly recruited in Carolina, won it out of high school. Makes a lot of sense. Brady Manick, a guy at Oklahoma that had played a lot of basketball, AJ, a lot of basketball. And it's shown that, hey, he can do it at this level.
Yeah.
That, like, Hubert Davis has had a lot of success with guys in that mold. You're not really bringing anybody in as of yet that kind of fits that mold. It doesn't mean that they're not going to come in to be successful. Let me reiterate that. Doesn't mean they won't. It's just when you kind of compare the two and you look at what's worked and maybe what hasn't worked for Hubert Davis so far. Yeah. I think there is very legitimate reason, not trying to be negative, before people get on me in the YouTube comments, because I know it's coming. But AJ,
You're never
I mean,
negative.
you know how people take out a comment. You learned a couple podcasts ago with your $1 million comment, but
And not having a haircut, which I still haven't had. I just got it gelled down.
I got to get a haircut too, man. I had
so
time
nobody talks about the hair in front of my face, and damn it,
Yeah.
Jay, get some sleep.
But again, there's reasons there's tangible evidence from those guys compared to the tangible evidence with these guys. I think it is very reasonable to come on here or if you're a Carolina fan and say, hey, I like these parts. There's a lot to like here, but I think it's fair to make that point, not just be like, these guys are going to come in and rock and roll and the Carolina's going to be a top 5 team next year. There's more evidence to support the other thing than to support that at this very moment.
And I'll add Pete Nance to it. People, I think, dump a little too much on Pete. Pete and Armando just didn't mesh that great, but Pete knew who he was as a player. That's the thing. Cormac knew who he was. Harrison knew who he was. Brady knew who he was. Pete, and they all knew who they were as players. They didn't need Hubert Davis to lift them up. Some of the others needed Hubert to lift them up. And that's an area that he's still growing in as a coach. And it's not criticism of Hubert. It's just noting where he needs to grow some.
It's just reality.
That's okay. Look, we all should continue growing. I made the comment before. I told you this early on. If Tony Gwynn felt like he needed to take batting practice before his last game in Major League Baseball, one of the greatest base hit guys of all time, one of the greatest hitters of all time, because he was still fine-tuning his craft, working his craft, then the rest of us should never stop trying to get better. Because he made contact and hit the ball as well as anybody I've ever seen. So if Tony Gwynn's taking BP on right before his last game, the rest of us are continuing to learn. As far as Hubert, he hadn't figured it out yet. He hasn't cracked the code on the cracked the code that Dean and Roy cracked. One of the things that both of them were really good at was instilling confidence in different ways. That's an area Hubert needs to grow in. So if you go out and get a guy that could come in and just himself being there gives everybody confidence. Mm-hmm. Lessens Hubert's job of constantly having to coach confidence in guys because the team's struggling some. You have a couple of those games this year where if a shot goes down and they win, a couple of them, that group collectively has a different confidence later in the year.
Yeah.
So next year, if you're looking at what we're looking at for the roster right now, they're going to be in a very similar situation where they're going to need to win games. But if you go out and get a guy, the marked man by other teams, and he can get you some of those buckets and you win some of those games, suddenly you're not maybe on the fence next year. Suddenly you're a little more comfortably in, maybe even more so than that. It's not coincidence that 2 of the 4 names we mentioned about transfers that knew who they were that came in were on the same team, and that was the number 1 seed. Mm-hmm. So they either get a guy who knows who he is, who's been there, done that, and you plug and play, and everybody gets better. That's the mission. I don't think you need to replace both Lubin and Drake. I think you need to go get your resources to one guy and have him make everything better.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good place to leave it. A lot to like about what Carolina's done in the portal. A lot to also, on the flip side, be skeptical about. Maybe you're just, hey, I want to see how this develops, and we're going to have to see how this works out because there's just no tangible evidence to really know yet. And I think that's fine, and that's what you expect in the transfer portal. So, yeah, I think we can leave it that. But again, if you can go out and get somebody like you said, been there, done that, ready-made kind of guy that you can say, yes, that's what Carolina needs, then I think this portal class goes from maybe a C+ to a B, maybe an A-. I think there are very fine margins here where it wouldn't take much. So, yeah, man, we'll see.
I agree. Like, they've got parts everywhere.
Yes.
You just need that dude who walks in the room and everyone says, whoa, that guy.
Exactly right.
I want to hang out with that guy.
Exactly. That's right, man. 100%, man. And we'll see. We'll see if they can go out and get that. A lot of work still to be done, but time to do it. So I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of our Daily Drop podcast series. Get involved in the comments. I'm intrigued to see what these comments look like for a number of different reasons. But get involved. Who do you think Carolina should get?
I try to reply, by the way. There were so many after the Lubin one. I just couldn't. I didn't have time to get back in there.
Yeah. You do a good job.
I don't mind the criticism. We always embrace criticism because it can help us get better.
Yeah, man. And it comes with the territory too. And again, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Everybody can disagree and or agree with what we say. And now why people need to go in the comments and make it personal and, just hate on things. I'll never understand. But again, that's none of my business.
I told you 6 years ago when you joined 6.5 years ago when you joined forces with us. Once you get out there and your name gets out there, you're going to get criticized. It's part of you have to accept that if you're going to do something like this. So it doesn't bother me. I like to explain to people. And sometimes they think that I'm pissy about it, but I'm actually not. I just like to explain when they think they're wrong, but it's all part of the deal. I enjoy the interaction. I love the fact that people are passionate enough to comment no matter what they say. I love that because I know as an Orioles fan, sometimes I want to go on threads and talk about how Mike Elias is this and that.
Oh, I completely understand it. Yeah, yeah. And again,
but I don't because I've become very tempered as I've gotten older in life and gotten far more experience in this business. Where you're in an arena that's bouncing up and down, you're the stable guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
100%,
that's kind of the way I've become in life, and I'm sort of like. Although I did curse about the Orioles yesterday,
I don't blame you.
2 straight games they lost by a combined 31-2. That's enough to make me throw dirt clods through the window, man.
Yeah, man. Oh, I get it, man.
Go back to my 12-year-old days of throwing eggs at UPS trucks.
I get it, man. I'm a Manchester United fan, and we're having the worst season I've ever witnessed in my life. So it's unbelievable. We haven't won a title in 11 years, AJ. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're
been 42 for the Balmer Birds.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. And let me end it with this. 99% of the people in our comments are absolutely fantastic, spreading a ton of love and showing a ton of support. So
I think
again, we appreciate everybody. Yeah,
even the ones who are not nice are still fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. We appreciate them getting involved, and again, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Just be nice if you disagree. You ain't got to make it personal, man. That's all I'm saying.
You're setting yourself up on a tee to get whacked here right now. People are
100%. No, the comments are going to rail me.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, Jacob Turner.
100%. Oh, AJ, I know every single comment that's going to be down.
If you don't want to get criticized, don't take a job like this.
Yeah,
come on, Jacob.
Yeah, 100% right. Yeah. Sometimes you got to, Edgy, I like to poke back a little bit. They can poke us. We can poke back a little bit, have a little fun with it.
Maybe one day we'll take a series of comments and we'll pop them up on the screen and we'll rebut on the screen.
Yeah.
Video. That'll be a lot of fun. Then we'll bring them on.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Again, we appreciate all the love.
Hey, we might do stuff like that this summer anyway. Bring people on.
Yeah, just do some stuff like that. Yeah, be some cool kind of content.
We might do an Ask AJ thing or Ask Jacob thing through YouTube, and then we'll do it, of course, on our site. We do a lot of that on our site. We also do private Zooms.
We have,
sometimes when I say I can't say something, we do the private Zooms. I'll say it.
Yeah, divulge a little bit more. You know what I mean? Unbutton the collar a little bit.
But
let it fly a little
getting
bit
into one of those private Zooms is like getting into Fort Knox.
Yeah, man. It ain't the easiest thing in the world.
We got to be careful who's in.
Got to be very careful in that respect. No, very careful. We'd love to come on here and tell you everything we know. It'd be absolutely fantastic. But we might not be covering North Carolina much longer if that was to happen. So
I'll be a greeter at Walmart after that. That's what people want to hire me.
Yeah, you're not the only one, man. You're not the only one. But again, appreciate everybody's support and love and watching. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you head on over to our social media platforms as well, Twitter and Facebook. We're still going to be giving away some free subscriptions to TarIllustrated.com once we hit a couple more milestones. 40K on Twitter, 15K on Facebook. I haven't checked recently. I'm assuming we're
almost there.
Close. Yeah, I figured we were. Yeah.
It'll end up being 5 or 6 freebies we've given away on Facebook alone. A couple on Twitter, and we'll keep going. Or YouTube, we'll keep going. YouTube zooming.
Yeah.
45,000.
Yeah. It's been great to see the growth on the channels, and long may it continue from a THI perspective. So appreciate you guys as always, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.